Welcome to the Focus on Why podcast. I'm Amy Rowlandson and I ask my guests one simple question. Why? Focusing on the importance of why, I share with you the relatable, uplifting and inspiring conversations I have with people from all walks of life. This podcast will encourage you to focus on your why to enable and empower you to achieve the success you desire. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Before we get started, are you thinking of creating a podcast or are you a podcast host already? As a podcast strategist, I can help you to launch or relaunch a purposeful and profitable podcast which will inspire, entertain and educate a global audience. Simply book in a one-to-one call with me right now via the Calendly link in the show notes, and together we'll focus on the purpose of your podcast. Today on Focus on Why, I am joined by Lynda Shaw. Lynda, hello and welcome.
Hello, Amy. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing really well. And I'm so excited to have the president of the Professional Speaking Association on this podcast. Boom, there she goes.
That's funny.
So let's get started. Let's delve into the world of Lynda Shaw. My goodness, what a world that is. Tell us more. What is it you're doing at the moment?
Well, as you know, I'm a neuroscientist and a business psychologist, and I'm very much concentrating on working with people who want to recalibrate their thinking. Companies and organizations get to the point where they've seen to the processes, they've seen to the systems, but things are still not quite right. So therefore, it could easily be their people. So I work with a C-suite and I give talks on keynote talks on recalibrating the brain. I work with C-suite in terms of giving them workshops on helping. And equally, I focus very much on a one-to-one with COOs. Because COOs have got such an amazing breadth of skill set. I have yet to meet two COOs who have got the same job spec. It's incredibly individual, and their dynamics are very broad. And to work with them is an absolute joy because they're on the journey of getting to the goal that the CEO has set or the board has set. So working with them is phenomenal. We have great fun doing it and we make some big inroads. So that's all good. And the other thing I do, of course, is I've got my online program called the Neuroscience Professional Development Program, and also the Learning Lab, which is a deeper dive into the neuroscience lessons. And that's for the individual. So I'm working with I'm working on keynote speaking. I'm working on workshops. I'm working on individuals in corporations and individuals who are wanting to improve their knowledge of neuroscience for their own sake and their own business. So I've got a lovely breadth of way I deliver my stuff. So that's what I'm up to.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
And I just wanted to sort of ask you about, you said you recalibrate their thinking or recalibrate the brain. What's the difference?
Well, recalibrate is actually rather an interesting word, isn't it? Recalibration, one thinks of as in terms of mechanics, recalibrating the clock when they changed. You change it by 1 hour. You recalibrate machinery. You recalibrate all cars. You recalibrate all sorts of things. But I rather like talking about it in terms of the brain, which of course enables thinking, because when I talk about embracing change or enabling change, we have a problem in that people go, oh no, that's too hard. I can't cope with the idea. I don't want to change the world. I've got too much to do. I'm far too busy. But if I talk about it in terms of recalibrating, it's little tweaks that make a very big difference. And that is what I concentrate on. So recalibrating the brain, our brain changes our behavior and our behavior changes our brain. So we are actually in a lot more control of our brain than we think. We're not completely in control of it because that would be silly, because we need our fight or flight response and all of those other things that are below conscious awareness. But nevertheless, there are things that we can attend to that we're in control of. And in so doing, we actually are changing the wiring of our brain. We're even changing the structure of the brain by the differences in our behavior, which is why I say the brain changes behavior and behavior changes the brain. It's this glorious feedback loop that we're able to manage very well when we're aware of how to do it.
Lynda, you've just reminded me. I went on your neuroscience professional development program, which is fabulous, and I learnt so much. And I had to press pause and rewind and listen back to things. And I'm already wanting to press pause and rewind what you've just said to catch up. It's just there's just so much going on in your mind, and being able to articulate that so beautifully and with such depth. Have you always had this skill set of being fascinated by the brain?
Oh, yes. And I didn't know it was about the brain when I first started this fascination. I can go right back to when I was a very small child and I wanted to speak to very old people. Well, of course, that probably meant 30 years old to a small child. But these people actually did have lots of lines and wrinkles. So I figured they're probably getting on a little bit. And I loved them. I wanted to find out why they did what they did. I mean, even my father's company, the firm he worked for, they used to put on a Christmas party for the people who were retired from the company. And Dad would go along and pick them all up in his car and bring them to this thing. I'd be in there in my element, talking to these people, finding out why they do what they do, what it was like when they were my age, why did that happen? And oh my, the curiosity was profound. I was an annoying child because I kept wanting all these people to talk to me about anything, and that has gone through my life because finding out why people do what they do was clearly with me at a very young age. But that also enabled me to, as I got older, to travel a lot. I'm an adventure traveler, and I know with climate change that those days might be numbered. But nevertheless, that is what I love, because if I can get amongst Indigenous people and just watch them, watch women at the river washing clothes, watching them at the water pump in the village, watching two wedding parties coming together of the bride and groom and making out of leaves the cups and the little plates ready for the wedding breakfast. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating to understand people, which is why I've got such a love of anthropology, which is a whole nother story. But what that does, all of that, enables freedom. It enables me to be free of constricting thoughts. It enables me to open up my thinking and being free to make decisions and deliberate choices based upon my interest in all the cultures of the world, all different kinds of people. And that is what I love. It's the freedom to freedom of choice, freedom to think independently, freedom from people who are imposing their will. I really dislike that. I I've got a problem with bullying. I do not personally, thank goodness, but I really don't like bullies who impose their will on others. So all of that sort of has come out of that original question, of that you came up with, and that then leads on to I've got this. I've had it for years and years and years. I need to make my life useful. I need to make I'm aware that life is so precious and short. And I even had diaries years ago where every year I would mark down why that year was spent well. And I now choose not to do that on a yearly basis, but I certainly do it by decades. I need to know that in my 20s, I used well because, in my 30s, I used well because, in my 40s, I used well because, and I'm going to stop there. Thank
Well,
goodness this is
there's no
audio.
reason to go any further. You're not older than that, Lynda.
Yay for audio. So, basically, I need to know that I'm not wasting my life. And if you ask me what I really dislike, I strongly dislike it when people say I can't be bothered. I think, what are you doing? You have got such a short amount of time. Use it. turn off the stupid box and use it, with all of those magnificent things we can learn about one another and experience. I'm sorry, I've got off, haven't I?
No, not at all. And you just remind me of calling it the stupid box. I mean, I remember it being called the box when I was a kid. Can you turn on the box or turn off the box? My goodness, I haven't heard that for a while. But the stupid box, go there. Tell me more.
Well, originally the stupid box, I was very, very lucky to travel to Bhutan a few years ago and trek in the Himalayas, which I've done from Nepal and Tibet. But Bhutan it was about the first year that they'd opened up their borders to an unlimited amount of tourists. And our guide was wonderful, a really cracking man. And we were up in the hills, trekking away and having a lovely time. But when we got back to the hotel, he stayed with us to have something to eat and drink. And we started to learn even more about him and his family. And he got really cross. And we said, what is the matter? He said, oh, my children, now that we have got all the borders are open, we're importing more goods. He said, and now we've got a stupid box. And he really meant it, because his children were watching the stupid box and he didn't like it. To him, they should have been out doing, learning, experiencing, doing chores, doing all of the things one needs to do to support one's family and village and community. But that's what so from that day, I have remembered his words, because sometimes in the evening I will sit down to put the television on, and by the time I go to bed, I think, yep, that was the stupid box, because it's such rubbish on television. Some of it's good, but a lot of it's not.
Wow. Yeah, I'm with you on that. And it's so easy, as you say, to just sort of switch off and have that mode of I can't be bothered, and just go to that default of allowing something else to happen to you. But you are someone who is so driven, and driven by freedom is clear here. You've mentioned it several times, but being free of constricting thoughts. Has it been a case that you have had moments of having constricting thoughts?
Yes, certainly. When one is, especially something that you're trying that's new, you try to. I can remember, for instance, when I first became a professional speaker, I would be talking in an organization or a conference. I would dress what I thought was the correct mode of dress. And I actually looked like a trussed up chicken, because I had all these clothes on that were restricting me. Don't do this to me. I did it to myself, because I thought that would be, people relate to people like them. So I wanted to look corporate. I'm not in the least bit corporate. So those restricting ideas, I think, happen when we are new to something and we think we need to fit in. In actual fact, there's no need to fit in at all, as long as you're not hurting anyone. You can just be yourself. And that authenticity, I think people warm to far more than somebody who's looking that uncomfortable, which is a way of thinking about restricting thoughts.
I can't imagine that you did look like a trussed up chicken, but because it's conjured up all sorts of images now, and maybe at a Christmas party you could turn up like that. It would be awesome. But from the perspective, Lynda, of going back to the fact that you just said that you're not corporate at all, and yet your entire environment is working with the corporate world.
Yes, it is. I think the corporate world has changed a lot, in that it now realizes it's got to be far more entrepreneurial in the way it acts. It's got to be far more innovative. It's got to be fast in the changing world, which sounds an awful cliche, but my goodness, you've really got to think on your feet. You have to keep up with the times. You've got to know what your clients and customers want and keep up with that, and not decide what you think they want. And I think the whole corporate environment has changed to be a lot more relaxed, and in terms especially of embracing different ways of thinking, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Of course, it is those differences that bring richness to any kind of organization, any kind. So by not looking, and I also think that especially these days, we are far more relaxed in our way of dressing anyway in the corporate world. It wasn't long ago, you go into the square mile in the city of London and you still have men dressed in pinstripe trousers and black jackets. Goodness me, that seemed like forever ago, but it wasn't that long. So, people now are in chinos and a jacket and not necessarily in a suit. And women are not. In fact, before COVID appeared on our doorsteps, I was in a law firm in the City of London. And I'm always interested in what the women are wearing. And bearing in mind, this was a very corporate type of law firm. I thought the last uniform for women to no longer have would be high heel shoes. And so I was looking at the feet of all these female lawyers, and they all had flat shoes on. I was like, oh my goodness, yes, we can have comfy feet, yes. So that really struck me. That was about 3 years ago now. And I thought that was excellent. So, we can be, if we're more comfortable, if we put our brains in a pleasurable state because we're comfortable and we're enjoying what we're doing, we are far more efficient and effective and so much more productive for our bosses and indeed as a boss. So I think this is all tying in rather nicely. We're evolving rather well.
And did you just describe your brain as your boss?
My brain is my boss, and I am the boss of my brain.
How does that work?
It works because brain changes behavior and behavior changes the brain. We can't separate it. We are able to work as a team with our brain. But certainly, the hormone fairy tends to be in charge somewhat, and sometimes our emotions seem to be in charge below conscious awareness, especially we make decisions below conscious awareness with an emotional response. But we can certainly kick in and get our cognitive brain thinking and to reevaluate. So we work as a team.
And as a neuroscientist and a business psychologist, you've just described having a hormone fairy. How does that work, Lynda?
Amy, having done the Neuroscience Professional Development Program, you know that the topic is exceedingly complicated, but I spend my life simplifying it rather, without dumbing it down. So the hormone fairy works. In fact, I must tell you as an aside, when my daughter was about 4 years old, I was banging on about the tooth fairy, the Easter bunny, Father Christmas. I was banging on about all of these things. And she looked at me and she said, Mummy, you can't believe in anything you can't see or touch. I went, think, Linda, she's 4. You've got to win this one. And I said, okay, I believe in love and you can't see or touch that. One, ka-ching to mother. One. So I do simplify things, but as I say, I never dumb them down. But people understand what I mean when I say hormone fairy.
So does that mean that your daughter still believes in the fairy and Father Christmas and all of those?
No, but I do. My daughter's now a solicitor, so there you go. Very factual young woman. I want to believe in the things that we can't necessarily explain. Of course, we can explain Father Christmas and the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny, but we always must remember that the evidence of absence doesn't mean the absence of evidence. So a good scientist has an open mind.
Oh, you're just spoon feeding all these wonderful quotes that I'm just going to be able to hand pick and to promote this episode. And that is just definitely one of them. So you had this fabulous curiosity as a small child, and we know where you are now. What was the gap? How was that journey from one to the other?
Wow, that's a long old story. How long have you got? I left school, didn't know what I wanted to do. All I wanted to do was travel. So I became an air stewardess with British Airways, long haul cabin crew. Because in those days I hadn't heard of a gap year. I didn't know that one existed, even if maybe it didn't exist then. So I traveled enormously, again, trying to find out why people do what they do. I then left the airline and I started a couple of businesses. And the third business I started was a health club that was the back of an old cinema. And I trained to teach exercise in that interim. And the old cinema it was so old, it had this door, massive door that was probably uh, the high as a two-story house, where all the old cinema equipment was wheeled in. And at the side rooms, and in this cavernous hole from floor to ceiling, was the organ pipes and things like that. So we had to put floors in. My husband and I, my husband stayed working. I was overseeing the project with my hard hat. No clue on earth what I was doing. And I was managing at one point 19 builders, as we had put 2 floors in that were very secure because of the gym equipment. We had a health food bar with a liquor license, beer and wine license. We had beauty rooms, a creche, dance studios, a shop. It was a big project for one so young. And we thought we had enough money, but it transpired that our original architect wasn't as good as he could have been. I'm going to be polite here. I wasn't polite at the time. And we ended up spending £40,000 on nothing. And I'm talking about the 80s. So we had to go into bank money. Anyway, from day one, we opened the doors of the health club, and we had 2,000 members and 20 staff. It was a phenomenal success. But because of our startup costs, we had to go into bank money. And in those days, base rate was 15%. So a business loan was more like 18%. So even though the club was a phenomenal success, we were feeding the interest of the loan. So by year 2, it was clear that we had a cash flow issue. So we tried to sell the club. And we had a buyer waiting in the wings for a very good price. But we actually went away for a couple of days, and our electricity bill came in whilst we were away. And I had the money in the bank ready, and our electricity bill for the month of February that year was £9,000. And the Southern Electricity decided that they were going to triple it for all small businesses in the area, so that it was acting like a deposit in case anything went wrong. So that £9,000 bill turned into £27,000, and we just didn't have it. So Southern Electricity turned us off. We had no burglar alarm, no saunas, no hot water, no anything. My husband and I slept in reception for security on sun lounges with our Doberman dog, and we lost our buyer. He disappeared. And so then when I look back at the photographs, we looked very poorly indeed. It was a big, stressful time. Anyway, we managed to find a buyer, but we sold for 10% of the market value, which was a great problem. But here's the interesting learning curve. We did everything right, except clearly we were underfunded because of the interest rates as they were in those days. But I did not. We also had the chance of an investor who wanted 30% of the business, and it was my first proper business, and I didn't want to give it away. It was like my baby. It was my precious baby, and I didn't want to give it away. So that was mistake number 1. Should never have done that. Should absolutely never have done that. We should have gone with that investor. Mistake number 2 was that after all of this is settled, we talked about it with our friends, and so many of them said, "Why didn't you help us? Tell us. We're looking to invest some money. We could have given you that money, that £27,000, which would have kept your buyer in the wings, and we'd have sold for the exact amount of money that it was worth." And that was massive learning curve. And that was never be afraid to ask for help. Absolutely huge lesson. So that was the health club situation, and I learned the hard way of how to run a business. And I continued to do so, made babies, and took myself back to university, and the rest is history.
Wow. I mean, you paint such a strong picture, Lynda, and I can just visualize all of that experience. And yeah, as you said, as you look back at those photographs, you didn't realize quite how stressful it was, and how you looked. You're probably just on that autopilot of just keep things going.
Yeah.
Hindsight is an incredible hindrance as well as a bonus. I mean, yes, it's great to look back, and it's easy for your friends to have said, oh, we would have helped you if you'd asked. You don't know if that had been the case, and it will probably haunt you otherwise. But there's different things now. And can you imagine a life without neuroscience?
Gosh, no, absolutely not. It's the most wonderful topic. It's an embryonic topic. It's brand new in the world of science. I'm really excited at the next generation of neuroimaging equipment coming out, because we might even unlearn what we think we know about the brain, because there is so much to learn about it. It's going to take us a long time before we feel comfortable that we know enough. And then, of course, you've got this amazing topic, which is my favorite topic of all, which is consciousness. Now, that is like the last frontier, which is why the whole reason I started studying neuroscience, because I wanted to understand consciousness, basically. But we're not doing so well at understanding consciousness when it comes to what people might call the soul or essence or whatever. But we're doing exceedingly well at understanding unconscious processing. So that's really exciting to be part of that. So, oh my, no, neuroscience is going to be in my life when I'm 150.
You make it sound like the most exciting thing, and it is. I mean, it really is so exciting. What are the things that drive you mad about what people say about the brain?
Oh, I heard somebody quite recently say, I know everything there is to know about the brain. I thought, what? I beg your pardon? Absolutely, 100%. No one does. No one, even our most eminent neuroscientists, absolutely no one does. Why people think they can come up with this nonsense is beyond me. I get very frustrated, as do my colleagues in neuroscience, when people speak about the brain incorrectly, because what happens is we as researchers, we work very, very hard on putting an experiment together. We do a massive amount of reading to know if it's worth doing. We then put experiments together. We then get the results. Analyzing the results is a mammoth task, and then we've got to make sense of the results. So they're then referring back to the reading that you did, and your new discoveries or newish discoveries, to build upon those that have been before you. And then you've got your conclusions, and then if you're lucky, you have an article printed in a wonderful journal, excellent journal, and that comes out, and that is fantastic. And then all hell breaks loose, because the popular press get hold of it, and all of a sudden it's changed slightly. And the next thing you know, several people have gone, oh, I can use that to sell my products, or oh, I can use that to sell my services. And it morphs again, and it morphs and morphs. And by the time it actually gets out there as popular news, it's nothing like the original research. Drives us cuckoo, drives us absolutely nuts that the people manipulate the information and therefore become so misleading. And it's simplified to the point of seriously being dumbed down, and therefore it becomes incorrect. And that is what drives a neuroscientist mad.
Left brain, right brain.
Oh, don't go there. No, no.
I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare. I know my boundaries with you, Lynda. Let's talk about purpose. What is feeding the purpose behind your work?
I get a huge kick out of enabling people to be in charge of their destiny, to as much into the limitations of what I know the brain has to do automatically. So if I get an amazing kick at unlocking people's thinking, so that they come up with these such delicious aha moments, and they come up with innovative ideas, creative ideas, or ideas whereby what they thought were dreadful conflict going on in the boardroom, or dreadful things, everyone's stuck is horrible, isn't it? I don't like stuck. So if I unstick people, that is my purpose. If I enable people to feel a certain level of control over their life, that means that not only are they more efficient in the workplace, but equally they are healthier mentally and physically. That's a good purpose to have, isn't it?
I unstick people. I love it.
There
That's
you go.
brilliant. Yeah, I love it. And the purpose in neuroscience, I mean, you know a huge amount about how important purpose is in your brain's functioning.
Yeah. One needs a reason to get up in the morning. Well, now, I actually used to get a bit upset because people have a life's purpose. I've never had one of those. And I thought, crumbs, there's something wrong with me because I haven't got a life's purpose. But I have a purpose at different stages of my life. So when my children were small, my purpose was to bring them up into good human beings. That's how I saw it, and I loved it. I've adored every stage of pregnancy and my children's upbringing, and indeed now I'm enjoying them as adults. And indeed, as being a grandmother, I'm absolutely loving it. It's delicious to watch human beings evolve and come the best they can possibly be. So yeah, so I have purposes at different times. At the moment, my purpose is I'm always there for my family. They are central to my being. But my purpose is also to enable people to get this planet out of the stickiness it's in. We need to work together. We've got to have innovative ideas. It's exciting. We are being pushed by extremes, and that is when the human race rises to the challenge. And we are going to be seeing some fabulously exciting things coming up with some incredible adventures for us all to participate in.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it, and I love your way that you use delicious. I, you and Kate Trafford are the two people that use it, and I don't know who started it, but both of you use that word in such a fabulous way.
Have I used it today? I don't even.
Twice.
Oh my goodness! I didn't realize I did. Yeah, life is delicious. It's precious. I read something a while ago, and it was by an eminent scientist, a physicist, and he said, and I'm going to get this thing wrong, but in the gist of it is this: he said that there are many, many, many Einsteins who have never been born. There are many, many Da Vincis who have never been born. There are many, many Kant. There are all sorts of people who have never been born. So we have been. So let's use that because there are many um, particles out there that will never become human beings. And I just thought that was an excellent way of thinking about it. So if we have been blessed with a life, let's get on with it and make the best of it we can.
So this desire that you have, that fabulous traveling bug that you've taken the fact that when you're not traveling physically, but you're traveling mentally.
Yeah, yeah, I am. Yeah. Um, Clearly, I'd love to get back up and have physical adventures, but the climate is far more important. So, clearly, so far more important. But what that means, we might have some amazing brains come up with innovative ideas of managing both. I don't know. That's why it's exciting to keep watching. But for me, reading of the internet, goodness me, Zoom, Teams, anything else you want. We can be talking to other cultures around the globe and learning about them. We don't, as much as I'd love to be there physically, the second best thing is actually still to reach out to people. And as I said at the beginning, find out why they do what they do. Why is that? What's going on in your country? What do you think is going on in England? What do you think is going on in the UK? What are your newspapers telling you about us? Which invariably is nothing like what we think is going on. So therefore, what we are reading about other cultures is probably not what they think is going on. So find out from the people on the ground out there, so what is it like? What does it mean? How sending your children to school? It's a 5 mile walk to find the teacher hasn't turned up and they've got to walk back 5 miles. What is that like? What does that mean to the education of the village and the community? I mean, oh my goodness. Honestly, Amy, it's an endless, lovely, delicious list. Yeah, I just love it.
So that anthropology piece is a strong driver for you.
It is. It always has been. To be honest, when I did my first degree, I only wanted to study social anthropology. I didn't want to study anything else. But my children were small. I was a mature student for my first degree, and I knew I couldn't go very far. So the university that accepted me said I had to, which was close to home, that I had to study social anthropology with another degree, another topic. And I had the choice of psychology, sociology, and communications, and I chose psychology by default. I didn't want to study it at all. But by the time I got into it, I realized how hard anthropology is. Oh my, it's about life. It's a massive topic. And I'm a yes, but what if person. So my 2,000 word essay would turn into 20,000 words, and I'd have sleepless nights trying to cut it down. But the psychology fitted the way I learn better and the way I think, which is quite interesting. So social anthropology is still very much a hobby of mine, but psychology and then neuroscience is a hobby as well as my work.
Yeah, I can see that. And that thread of being fascinated in why people do what they do theme has thread been a course all the way through your life. I mean, it's there. You can see it. It's so strong from that little girl watching those very old 30-year-old wrinkly people. I love it.
Absolutely.
My goodness. It is funny though, the perceptions that we have as a child, and then, how that child stays with you. You are that person.
Wow.
And yeah, and that really intrigues me, the fact that you've got this one person in this body that has experienced so many different viewpoints and perspectives over life. It's fascinating.
It is fascinating. And it just goes to show, actually, maybe we don't change that much. Maybe we just bury it with the crud of life, layers and layers of life experiences, which make us who we are as well. But it doesn't mean to say that those original natural talents and drivers may still be there. They're not necessarily buried for good.
And it's interesting you talk about the natural talents and drivers, because I've literally I write a weekly newsletter, and the one for tomorrow is all about our natural talents and strengths and
Lovely.
how they do show up very early, and we bat them away, whether that's part of the education system and where they teach us to focus on improving our weaknesses instead of focusing on our strengths. And so
Absolutely.
we sort of let them sort of dwindle a bit because we're trying to catch up with the areas that we're not good at, and we focus on those strengths as we get on later on in life, and it just seems such a waste of natural talent and innate ability.
Well, it's that actually follows on from our conversation just now, in that when I, first time on the stage, it's about being restricted by being the person you think your audience or the people you work with or your family want you to be. But so again, we're coming back to the freedom thing, because if we follow our innate curiosities, that we seem to have been born with. And clearly, we can't go into the nature nurture debate because that's a whole different topic. But if we've got all of those things going on, and we allow that the original talents that we had to come through, we are actually demonstrating freedom. We're demonstrating freedom of choice. We're demonstrating being who we are. And I don't want to say, oh my goodness me, that's at the detriment of everyone else. It certainly is not. We do have to be considerate and respectful of everyone, and especially those we love. We don't want to hurt anyone. But nevertheless, when I am exercising this interest in why people do what they do, I know I'm at my best. And if I'm at my best, it means that others will get the best of me.
Love that. I love the circular structure of our conversation today, right back to that curiosity and freedom of choice again, which was what you sort of started out with, and having fun, making things fun and enjoying what you're doing and helping people on their journey to really recalibrate their thinking, recalibrate their brain.
Yeah, exactly. And fun is the great word, Amy. It's a great word. Where is it written that life shouldn't be fun? I've not seen it written anywhere. And yeah, things are going to happen, and we certainly won't feel like having fun. But when things are going all right, go for it. Just go for it. Enjoy.
Oh, Lynda, it's been such a pleasure exploring your world, your way of thinking, your wonderful authenticity and your approach into the how the brain works, why we do what we do, learning more about the stupid box. My goodness, I will be challenging when that gets turned on later. I'll be thinking, what could I be doing instead?
You'd be better off actually to stare out of the window and watch the rainfall. You know,
Ah, because then we'll be in alpha frequency, won't we, Lynda?
exactly. We will be in the most creative way we will be for the whole day. Absolutely right.
Oh, fabulous. So how will people get in contact with you? I'm sure somebody's going to think I need to do that professional development neuroscience program because I don't know all there is to know about the brain and I would like to know a little bit more.
Well, I'm Lynda with a Y. So my email address is lynda@drlyndashaw.com, LYNDASHAW. My website is drlyndashaw.com. I'd be delighted to hear from anybody who wants to discuss anything at all. If they found this remotely interesting, it'd be really good to hear from you.
Oh, well, I'm sure people will find it interesting because, I'm sure they've had to rewind and listen back to several things like I always do when I listen to you because there's so much packed into such a short period of time. Lynda, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, coming on Focus on Why and giving us a wonderful insight into why you do what you do. Do you have some final words for the audience, please?
Just like life, the curveballs come, and sometimes they're devastating. But when the times they're not, lighten up and try not to take life too seriously. It's all a game anyway. So there is very little in life that is really serious. So look after yourself and be the best you can.
Thank you for listening to Focus on Why with me, Amy Rowlandson. To show your appreciation and to help other listeners understand what value you have received from tuning in today, please leave me an Apple Podcast 5-star review. Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. To keep it going, connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook or Twitter, or join the inspiring, uplifting and positive Focus on Why Facebook group. All the links are in the show notes. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.